Hi there, Jim from Prevelo Bikes here, and today we're going to show you how to assemble your Zulu 2 or Zulu 2 Air. Alright, so let's get started by removing the bike from the box and removing all of the packing material. Now, a Zulu 2 has three main steps of assembly. So we're going to install the handlebars, the front wheel, and the pedals, and then once the bike is assembled, we just run through and do a quick safety check. So let's get started with the first step of assembly, installing the handlebars. Okay, so first we want to remove the faceplate from the front of the stem. So go ahead and grab your Prevelo multi-tool and select the 4mm hex key. So that's the hex key that's going to fit these bolts. And we're just going to unscrew all four bolts. Okay, so with the faceplate removed, we're going to put our handlebar into position. Now, you want to note the orientation of the handlebar. So the marks and the logo are in the front, the brake levers are facing forward, and the brake hoses are in a nice smooth path. So the rear brake, the hose should wrap around the frame and into the top tube, and the front brake hose should just stay out in front and go behind the fork. You want to make sure that nothing is twisted around, the hoses aren't behind the stem with the handlebar out in front, so it should have a nice smooth cable path. Okay. So knowing that everything is in the correct position, we're going to lift our faceplate up. I like to load all four bolts into the faceplate. It just makes this part a little bit easier. So get your faceplate into position, and then I just finger tighten the bolts in to get everything started. This also helps avoid cross threading later. So if you're finger tightening, you know that the bolt is going to go in nice and smooth. So get everything started. Okay, and now when we tighten this up, we want to note the gap between the faceplate and the top of the stem. Okay, so this gap should always be even with the gap on the bottom. So there's a gap here and a gap here. You don't want to just tighten the top and get the gap closed up. You want to, because that would put a big gap on the bottom, right? You just want to equalize the pressure. So as you tighten, make sure the gap on the top and the bottom stay the same. In addition, we're going to tighten down these bolts in a cross pattern. So similar to if you were going to tighten the bolts on the wheel of a car. So we're going to go 1, go diagonal across, 2, then it's across the bottom, 3, and 4. So again, in that cross pattern. Okay. So I'm going to start on this first bolt. I'm going to drive it all the way in, and I'm not going to drive it until this gap is closed. I'm just going to drive it until the bolt is snug. Okay. So let's start with this top bolt, drive it in. Okay, so now I left a little bit of a gap, and I can move down diagonally to this bolt. Now at this point, I like to take advantage of the fact that the handlebar is a little bit tighter and make sure it's centered from side to side so that these marks are in the center of the handlebar, or in the center of the stem. And I want to get the brake levers about 45 degrees from level ground, or the handlebar bend is going to go up. Okay, you can roll the handlebar back more or roll it forward more if that's your preference, but as a general neutral position, the rise should go up and the brake lever should be about 45 degrees. So now I'm going to move on to this last bolt. Okay, so now the two bolts diagonally across are nice and snug, and I can see that the gap at the top and the gap at the bottom are even. So now I'm going to move on to the third bolt on the bottom left. Okay, so now I have the first 3 bolts snug, so I'm going to move on to the final bolt. Okay, so now all 4 bolts are snug, so I'm ready to torque them down. So what I'm going to do is turn the wrench into an L shape, and I'm going to do it in the same pattern that I did before. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you should be able to get about a quarter turn out of each bolt. And it should have plenty of resistance, but you shouldn't be straining yourself to tighten these bolts. So 2, third bolt, and 4th bolt. Okay, so now the handlebar is nice and tight. To confirm, you want to try to grab it and move everything around and confirm that nothing moves. It should be nice and tight. Okay, so with the handlebar installed, we can move on to installing the front wheel. I like to flip the bike upside down like this for the rest of the assembly. I think it just makes it a little bit easier so you don't have to deal with the bike knocking over or anything like that. Now to install the front wheel, just get your front wheel handy. You'll need your multi-tool and then the front skewer out of the parts box. Before we put the wheel into place, there might still be this little pad spacer in the brake. So just pull that out of there. This little plastic spacer is just so that if you pull a hydraulic brake without either the spacer in place or the front wheel, the pads will go in and get stuck. If that happens, when you get the wheel in, you're either gonna have excess brake rub or you won't even be able to get the wheel into place. You'll have to reset the whole brake and it's a pain. So please just make sure you don't pull the front brake without either this in place or the front wheel. All right, so let's get our wheel in place. So it's easy to tell the direction of the front wheel because only one side has the brake rotor. So when you put in the wheel, just make sure that the brake rotor slides into the caliper. All right, so we're gonna slide the front wheel into place. All right, then just go ahead and grab your front skewer. So on the skewer, one side is an Allen key and the other side is just a nut. So you can unscrew the nut, remove the nut, and then you'll have one of the springs that you also want to take off. So one spring should stay on the skewer, the other should be removed. Now these springs are directional. There's a larger side and a smaller side. The large side is going to face the outside of the bike, the small side will face the inside of the bike. You can see the orientation by the spring that's already on the skewer. So the other one is going to be in the same orientation as this. Well, the opposite is going to be a mirror image, okay? Now, the side with the Allen key, you're gonna slide in through the disc brake side. So I'm just gonna take the skewer, slide it through the axle, okay? Now we're gonna take the spring and I'm gonna put it on the other side of the axle, small side in, and then I'll take my nut and then just finger tighten it onto there, okay? Get your multi-tool and you wanna locate the 5mm. So the 5mm hex key, and I'm going to stick it in the side with the Allen key hole. You can, so you can do this a couple ways. I'm just going to hold my hex key while I tighten the nut. And then I'm just going to torque it down. So now that that's tight, when I turn the Allen key, the nut will stay in place. So, and these skewers can be pretty tight. It would be really difficult to over tighten this with the multi-tool. But you're probably going to get about a 1/2 to 3/4 turn from being snug to fully tightened down. Again, it would be really difficult to over tighten this, so just get it nice and tight. You don't have to kill yourself, but you shouldn't be worried about breaking anything if you get this nice and tight. I would err on the side of having it too tight rather than too loose. Okay? Pull the brake, make sure everything functions as it should, and that's it. The front wheel is installed. All right, so now we're ready to install our pedals. So go ahead and grab your pedals from the parts box. Now, pedals are right and left specific. So when you take them out of the box, they'll be labeled with an R and an L for right and left. That's because left pedals are opposite threaded. If when you remove the packaging, you also discarded the stickers, that's okay. If you just look at the pedals, if you can read the logo, that's the right and that's the left. If the logo is upside down when you look at them like this, then you need to switch them because the pedals are backwards, okay? Also at the end where you put the tool, the right pedal is smooth and the left pedal has little hash marks. So when you're looking at them next to each other, it's easy to tell that the left is the one with the hash marks, okay? So I'm gonna start with my right and I'm gonna get the standalone 6mm that was in the parts box. Yes, the multi-tool does have a 6mm, but pedals need to be very, very tight. So if you use the multi-tool, you're probably gonna bend it and damage it when you're trying to tighten the pedals. So the standalone 6mm is a much better tool. If you opted for the aluminum air pedals, you'll need this little adapter that came in the box. So this is an adapter that brings it from a 6 to an 8mm. That's because the alloy pedals use an 8mm instead of a 6. Okay, so take the 6mm and I'm going to slide it through the back of the right crank arm straight through the pedal hole. So the right arm is the one with the chain. And I'm going to take my right pedal and get it so that the tool is on. And then I'm just going to tighten that into the crank arm. So thread it all the way in until it stops. So, and if you have to fight this at all, if it's difficult to thread, you might be cross-threading the pedal, especially if you can only get it in a turn or two, or maybe you grab the wrong pedal. So again, make sure you have the correct pedal, and you might have to just readjust to make sure the pedal is going in the crank arm straight, okay? So once the pedal is all the way in, I like to get the crank arm at about a 45-degree angle and then put my wrench in to match it. Now, if you grab the back tire, if I push on the tire this way, you can see that it's moving the crank. If you move the wheel the other way, it just freewheels. So what this means is I can hold onto the wrench and push the wheel, and as I push the two against each other, I can tighten the pedal. So I like to do that because it just helps me get the pedal really tight without having to fight anything. Okay, so I'm going to grab the wheel, grab the wrench, and push them towards each other, and now that pedal is tightened. Okay, so now I'm ready to move on to the left pedal, so I'm just going to do the opposite. Get this thing, the hex key just threaded through. And there we go. Get the thread started. Tighten the pedal all the way down, just like we did before. And now that it's flush against the crank, I'm going to get the crank at 45 degrees, get the wrench in there, and I'm going to push on the tire the same way I did before. Pedals torqued down. Well, that's it. Pedals are installed. All right, so now the bike is fully assembled. Now the only thing that we need to do is adjust the seat height and just do a quick safety check. So to adjust the seat height, the quick release, it requires no tools. So it's just a lever that you open up and then get the seat up or down as needed. Now, just make sure you don't raise the seat too much to where you can see the minimum insertion. That line should be down inside the frame at all times, or else there's not enough support for the seat. Now, get the seat at the proper height, look down the seat and make sure it's straight in line with the bike, then it's not crooked, and then just simply close the lever. So if you close the lever and you can twist the seat from side to side, or the lever is very difficult to close, you just have to adjust the tension with the nut on the back side. So with the lever open, if you can move the seat, you need to tighten it. And if the lever is very difficult to close, then you need to loosen it. So get it at the proper tension by either tightening or loosening, and then simply close the lever. Okay. Now, to do a quick safety check, first thing, just make sure there's air in the tires. Give the tires a nice squeeze. Make sure they have proper pressure. Make sure that the brakes stop as they should. The wheels aren't loose. The handlebars aren't loose. And then the bike is ready to ride. So if for some reason something is loose and you need to tighten it up, your multi-tool has a wrench size for almost every bolt on the bike. So make sure you keep this for future maintenance or anything that you need. It's always good to have a tool handy. All right. So that's it. I hope your little one enjoys. Go out, let him rip. Thank you. Take care.